Dare to consider, what does your job career look like? What are the influences that you're going to experience in the search or pursuit of your job? How do you prepare today for jobs in the future that don't exist? In your career, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind? It's a lot of questions. We're going to spend the next 10 minutes talking about positive psychology and the role that positive psychology can play in the pursuit of your career. So before we start, let's do a little bit of groundwork. Let's lay out the foundation for the job search. We graduate from high school or get a GED. Some of us go straight into the unskilled workforce. Some of us go to technical school or a trade school and get a trade certification. Some of us are inspired to go to college and get a degree. And some of us actually go to the next level and get a graduate degree or a doctorate degree. So the individual that goes to the unskilled market, they are learning hands-on, trial-by-error skills. Some of them may have a mentor or a supervisor that takes a keen interest in helping to develop their skills. The individual that goes to the trade school or the technical school actually commits a specific period of time to develop their craft or skill. The college-bound individual puts their faith and hope into colleges and universities and expect that these institutions will know what they are going to do when they get out in the workforce. The Washington Post recently published an article that said only 27% of college graduates have a job in their major. Only 27%. That's just over a quarter of college graduates. What are the other 73% doing? So if I made the statement, a college degree is the strongest signal of job readiness, would you agree? The reality is that a college degree will present opportunities to land a job interview. However, research done by the firm Burning Glass showed that job ads are actually seeking individuals with college degrees as well as soft skills and other requirements. Some are even seeking licensure or a certification. Okay, so one more question. What is the legacy that you want to leave behind in your career or your profession? Think about that. For me, I'm a United States Air Force veteran, and I served in the Gulf War. In my corporate life, I was a chief financial officer, and I was instrumental in securing angel investment funding to take a privately held company from prototype to product. I had to make a lot of decisions in my career, a lot of decisions. And some of those decisions were very difficult. So let me ask you this. Have you ever questioned a decision that you've ever made? Some of us are so critical on ourselves that we actually beat ourselves up and we spend time and time thinking about what we did wrong. That time spent is time thinking in the past. That's normal psychology. Figuring out what went wrong, then analyzing past behaviors. In positive psychology, we look to the future. We look at the strengths. We can look in the past and figure out what those strengths are, but don't spend too much time there. Because what we want to do is move forward and dare to consider the opportunities that may exist. So there are opportunities, but we also have wish lists. Does anybody have a bucket list? So what's in your bucket list? More education, maybe career advancement, possibly start a family or extend a family, or maybe travel the world. How does that work out in a work-life balance? How does your job or your future job going to balance that mixture? A lot of those interests are focused on the job that you're going to get. So we talked about the job process. So what are the jobs of the future? The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics published that the jobs with the fastest growth between the years 2000 and 2010 are actually jobs relating to computer science. They're computer engineering, they are computer support services, they're database administrators, and they're network administrators. They also projected that the jobs with the fastest growth from today to the year 2026 are in health services. So there are going to be home care aides, personal care aides, nurse practitioners, or physician assistants. But those are projections based on the past. So let's look to the future. If we asked a financial investor, what is the fastest growing industry to invest in? That's a difficult question. Because if you think about it, a firm that is successful in one industrial sector, there are other firms that may not be so successful. So what's the answer? If I asked you, what do you think are the most fastest growing industries today? What would you say? Forbes magazine published that the fastest growing industries are construction, are computer systems, are sustainable energy, and virtual reality. So let's take a look back at the reality and how we actually develop our focus on our outlook for job placement. Does anybody have a job that you actually aspire to have, and you're happy in that job? When we look at those jobs, we feel confident that that's where we're going. The U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics also said that the outlook is actually based on the history of what they've found. So let's go back to positive psychology. If you remember, we mentioned that normal psychology focuses on what went wrong. Well, positive psychology, in reality, will change that. Because in normal psychology, if we focus on what went wrong, then our brain tends to be biased on the negative. But in positive psychology, we're going to reverse those biases and we're going to focus them on the positive. If we reset our biases and we focus on the positives, we can understand how to get to the future job in that location. So the Langley Group published an article titled "The Science and Practice of Positive Psychology." They outlined the 5 underpinning factors of positive psychology. The first one being abundance. What works for you and how can it work better? The second one is virtues and strengths. Virtues is what makes our identity and our character. Aristotle has told us to strive to live in accordance with the best thing in us. The strengths are at the heart of positive psychology. Focus on your strengths and you can become what you want to become. The third one is positive deviation. That third principle is going against the grain. Think outside of that box. It's okay. It's not going to hurt you. It's just a box. The fourth one is flourishing versus languishing. Polar opposites. Complete opposites. Flourishing is recognized by resilience and growth. And the fifth one is happiness and wellness. In positive psychology, happiness has 2 forms of wellness. The first one is subjective wellness, and that is a hedonic experience. It is matching the most gratifying experience with the most positive emotions. The second one is the psychological well-being. In the psychological well-being, it is the optimal outcome, psychological outcome. So focus on what is good and what works for you and how to make it better. The message is clear. So let's go back to that job. We're looking at that job, and we are saying, what is the job of the future? How am I going to engage myself in preparing for that job in the future? Well, first, let's look at trends in industry and global trends. Sustainable energy, cybersecurity, big data and information processing, and also health services and sciences. So when we look at that, we can then go and take a focus on our individual strengths and our interests. What do you want to do? But what are you good at doing? How do we match our strengths with our interests? The answer is actually positive psychology. Create your own storyboard by using the 5 principles of positive psychology. And by doing that, you will appreciate and amplify what works for you. Thank you.